Maybe just a quick note from my side, because I see people writing into the chat. You have two options to choose in the chat. Either you can choose all participants of the discussion, which is only the speakers and the moderators, or you can choose to write to all speakers as well as to the other participants. So if you want to say actually hi to everyone, then you need to choose discussion participants as well as normal participants, just as a side note. So I see in my little window that we should be live on YouTube now. I hope that works.
It's working.
Okay, great. Then welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube. It's really great to have you here. We have already started a little bit with the technical issues around Zoom. So for those of you who are participating on YouTube, you can of course also join our discussion. There is a chat function on the YouTube live stream. So if you want to raise any questions, you can write them into the chat, and then we will try to feed them back into our Zoom webinar so that the participants and speakers can also answer to your questions. So both the recording and the presentation will also be available afterwards. Those of you who have registered for the webinar will anyways receive an email with all information afterwards. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, we will put a link to the presentation into the show notes of the YouTube video after the webinar. So please just go back to the webinar once it has ended and you can find all information there. So now, before coming to the interesting part where I will introduce our really interesting speakers today, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Sina Marx. I'm a coordinator for international projects and campaigns with FEMNET. We are a Germany-based NGOs, and for those of you who don't know us yet, I will give you a quick update of what we are, what we're doing, and how we came to organize this webinar today. So as you can see, FEMNET is an association. We are a member-based women's rights association founded in 2007, and we work for the economic, social, and cultural rights of women worldwide. Doing that, we focus on women in the garment industry specifically, and we are doing that as a member of the Clean Clothes Campaign. The Clean Clothes Campaign, or CCC, is a network that brings together more than 230 organizations all around the globe, dedicated to improving working conditions of women workers, garment workers, and empowering workers in the global garment sector. And all three other organizations who are on the panel today are also members of the CCC network. FEMNET is working mainly in three areas, which is one, campaigning and advocacy. So we are doing a lot of lobby and advocacy towards brands and politicians. We are doing education and counseling, but today we are focusing basically on our third pillar, which is solidarity work. We're doing joint projects and campaigns with partners in Bangladesh and India. And yeah, we have been doing such campaigns and projects also with all three organizations and all three great women that we have on the panel today. So yeah, they were also the first ones to actually tell us about the desperate situation of garment workers in India and Bangladesh in this time of crisis all around COVID. So we had a first webinar to report on the impact of the coronavirus on workers on the 24th of April, which was the 7th anniversary of Rana Plaza. So that was at a time when actually public life in many countries had come to complete halt due to pandemic-related lockdowns, and economies worldwide were on the verge of collapse due to the crisis. Now it is 5 months later, and while in many consumer countries, pandemic regulations have actually relaxed compared to April, the virus itself has spread, and with it also the effects. So today, India has almost 5 million cases and more than 90,000 people died. And yeah, when we talked in April, we feared that the economic and social effects of the crisis would hit the most vulnerable groups also the hardest, which means women workers, migrant workers, women and workers in the informal sector. And to support specifically them, we collected donations in order to set up a Corona Emergency Relief Fund and to distribute the very basic goods of living to those people and their families who had lost their income and were literally fighting for survival. So today we will be looking both at how the situation has changed since April, as well as how emergency relief was and also will be in the future distributed to support workers and their families. Yeah, and for this, I'm very happy to finally welcome our speakers today. Let me quickly introduce them to you. So first speaker, our first two speakers actually are from India. Deepika Rao is Program Director at the NGO Cividep, which is based in Bangalore, and which works to ensure that businesses comply with national and international standards of human rights. And with this objective, Cividep studies the effects of corporate activities, both on communities and workers, and also educates workers on their rights. So Deepika has also conducted several research studies on women and migrant workers in the garment industry, also together with FEMNET. We have been focusing a lot on childcare facilities in factories and yeah, worked together on that. So I'm really glad that you can be here, Deepika. Then our second speaker is Mary Viyakula, who is Executive Director of SAFE, an NGO that is also based in India, but in the federal state of Tamil Nadu, also in the south of India. And she is Program Director of the Labor Resources Center, which facilitates numerous training programs and awareness raising programs to educate workers about their rights. And Mary has been working for more, I think, than 15 years, fighting against rights violations, especially of women and also children in Tamil Nadu, and especially in spinning mills and factories, on which we have also been collaborating together with FEMNET. So yeah, Mary, really great to have you here. Then third will be Kalpona Akter, who is the founder and executive director of the Bangladesh Center for Workers' Rights, for Workers' Solidarity, sorry, rights is also important, BCWS. She began working in garment factories at the age of 12, and since the year 2000 has devoted her life completely to work for trade unions and as an activist for workers in the country. For her tireless fight towards improving these rights, she has been awarded the Human Rights Watch's Award for Extraordinary Activism. And together with FEMNET, she is working towards ending harassment and violence against women in factories. So also great to have you here, welcome. And last but not least, Dr. Gisela Burckhardt, who is the founder and chairwoman of the German NGO FEMNET, which I just introduced to you. And she is also working for improving the working conditions in the garment industry, among others within the German Clean Clothes campaign, also the German initiative that strives towards legislation in supply chains, mandatory human rights due diligence law. And also she is a member of the steering committee of the German Textile Partnership, which is a multi-stakeholder initiative which has a lot of private sector members who make up for about half of the German textile market. So welcome, Gisela, and thank you also for initiating this webinar. So you see, we have a very interesting panel and many speakers today, so it will be difficult to give everyone enough time to explain. So therefore, I would say let us start right away with a look at the country that has become the new corona hotspot, kind of, India. So I would like to give the floor to Deepika. Deepika, as I said in the introduction already, you are Program Officer with Cividep in Bangalore, and you prepared for us an overview of the situation in India as well as in Bangalore today. So yeah, you're welcome to start your presentation.
Thank you, Sina. As Sina has already shared with you all, India has achieved the dubious distinction of being the second worst hit nation right now with respect to coronavirus. And we are poised to surpass even the United States. The cases are, the numbers are, I think if we go to the next slide, we can see the number as well. So we've had more than 5 million cases, and it's 90,000 deaths, and it's constantly increasing. So we are nowhere close to the peak. Several experts have projected the peak to be maybe in I don't know, later this year or early next year as well. The worst hit, of course, were the metro cities. And right now, I think Mumbai and Bangalore are quite badly hit, the worst in India. But the reality is also that the virus has now spread to rural parts, large rural parts of India, because a lot of people from the cities migrated back to their hometowns and carried with them the virus as well. And the rural parts of India are not as well equipped. Even the cities are actually finding it difficult to take on the burden of the cases into the hospitals and treatment. But rural India is even worse off than the cities. Cities are. The nationwide lockdown was announced on 24th of March, and since then, yeah, so it was, I think, a lockdown which was announced with very, very less um, notice given, only 4 hours notice given. And that kind of took a lot of the majority of the population by surprise. And only essential services like medicines and hospitals and essential transport was allowed to work, and everything else was shut down. And so this has been said to be like the strictest lockdown in anywhere in the world. And this was announced very, very early, when we had only a few cases, I think 500 cases in the country or something. So one of it was yeah, so not a well thought out decision, which put a lot of migrant workers, the most vulnerable sections of our country, in deep, deep trouble. What we saw, and what I think none of us, not the government, none of us expected, was that in a few days' time, migrant workers in large numbers left the cities and started walking back towards their houses, towards their native villages. This was because they had lost their incomes in the cities. So most of them were daily wage workers in construction sites, or street vendors, vegetable sellers, and various odd jobs. And when this lockdown was announced, their daily livelihood was snatched away overnight. And they really do not have the savings to stay in the city much longer than a few days with that kind of work. And so it's some by according to some experts, this is the biggest migration on foot after the partition of India in 1947. Yeah, and they had to all walk back home because there were no public transport available at all. And this was a big, big media spectacle in March and April, and even up to May and June, we were hearing about stories of migrants walking back home. A lot of migrants lost their lives on the highways, and many of them died of starvation on the way, exhaustion, dehydration, various things. And it was the peak of summer in India. So it was a very, very tragic state of affairs when the lockdown was announced. Um, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, the textile industry. So basically, it has it consists of 80% of them are very small micro enterprises employing less than 20 people or less than 10 people. And a lot of these, I mean, there's not a lot of data to go by because the government is also not has not released this data, but um, the the data, I mean, the projection that some of the experts are making is that a large number of them would have shut down because of the huge disruption in supply chain, and will now not reopen. And the likely job loss in the sector is around 10 million jobs lost. And the disruption really started when when the pandemic hit China first, with a lot of the raw material not coming to India. Then second was the Europe falling prey to the pandemic, and the demand really is going down severely, orders getting cancelled by the brands. And then the pandemic hit India with the lockdown, the factories were shut completely. And so this is a major disruption of the supply chain, and hence the number of jobs lost is huge. A lot of our in our experience, a lot of the factories have just not reopened after this major loss. The industry has been demanding relief. So basically, the government, when the lockdown was announced, the government said that gave guidance to companies that wages for the workers should be paid. But of course, the industry was suffering its own losses. The industry also protested against this, and it remained a very voluntary guidance and not really something that the government was able to implement on the ground. And not so 90% of the workers probably were not paid for the months that the industry did not function. So that was almost up to 2.5 months, starting end of March. And several state governments also use this as an opportunity to relax labor laws. So basically, India was anyway undergoing labor law reforms, which were also being severely criticized, severely contested by the trade unions. But this pandemic kind of put a halt to all sorts of other consultations or protests that were going on, and some of the state governments were able to push through with a lot of labor law relaxations, which in the view of the experts, uh, really pushed back the any of the advancement or the progress that India had made in the last few decades with respect to labor rights. Next slide, please. In Bangalore, basically, what we have been seeing is that a large number of so all the factories shut down when the lockdown was announced with very little notice. But the factories have some of the factories have reopened, many have remained shut. So those workers have completely lost their jobs, and they have entered an informal workforce, which is not fully employed. It is less than sufficiently employed. It is less than sufficiently paid. The factories which have reopened as well, they have also reduced workforce significantly. And so this has given this has put pregnant women, older women, as well as women who lived far away from their place of work at a disadvantage, because the factories have refused to ply buses, saying that they need to maintain social distancing, and it is not possible to do that in buses. And also, creches have not yet been started in factories for the fear of the virus. And so, a lot of these women with small children have not been able to get back to work at all. Um, and uh, and it has just been a struggle for these workers right from the time that the lockdown was announced and the food was in short supply. We have been reaching out to some of these workers with relief efforts, but of course the tragedy itself is so huge in its size that we are able to do very little. Yeah, next slide, please. Yes, so what we have been doing, and we have probably reached out to, I would say, maybe 5 to 6,000 workers in and around Bangalore area, and this is in partnership with our organizations, that is Munadi Social Organization, which is a community-based women's organization, and a government labor union, which is a women-led government trade union. And we have been able to provide some dry ration support that so CBDEP is also not a relief organization, nor were we involved in large scale implementation of schemes. And so it took us some time to respond to the situation, but and also place ourselves in this entire crisis as to how we would want to respond to our constituency, that is government workers. And so, but since then we have been providing dry ration support to workers. Along with so dry ration like rice and pulses and some of the spices that are used in Indian cooking, to some government workers in collaboration with Greenpeace. We were also able to distribute some fresh vegetables to some workers. And then we also had a breakfast distribution program that you can see on your screen, the picture of that. Basically, 300 to 350 workers were given breakfast every day for, I think, about 10 to 15 days. And this was a ready-to-eat breakfast, and that the intention behind this was that at least one cooked healthy meal has been provided to the worker themselves, who would otherwise be cutting down on all sorts of costs for survival during the pandemic. And nutrition takes a huge hit. And we have been doing some disease-related awareness programs as well amongst workers. And some of this has been online, some of this has been through distribution of pamphlets with the relief material, and also with counseling over phone, and then connecting workers to government relief and support agencies. The distribution also we did not restrict it to food. We also went on to, in some areas, distribute dignity kits to women, basically consisting of hygiene products, including sanitary napkins. And these were also in short supply and in huge demand in amongst workers. Because these were some things like sanitary napkins they weren't able to afford during the lockdown. Then we have been also doing some transfers, direct cash transfers through banks, and this is for taking care of the workers' rent to stay in the city, to continue to stay in the city, look for other employment opportunities. So some cash assistance so that they can use that to pay their rent, or for mobile recharges, or for cooking gas refills. And now we are also trying to raise funds for the education of, continuing the education of garment workers' kids, because the schools have also been shut since March. A lot of the like schools of the other population, like the middle class and others, have been able to restart online. But because garment worker kids do not have this kind of facilities available to them, like a dedicated smartphone for their kid or a laptop, they're not able to, and neither does their school have the infrastructure to run these classes online. So we've been trying to support some of these kids. The kids who did go to private schools which have started classes online, we're trying to raise some funds to get mobile phones, used mobile phones, or yeah, shared mobile phones to them. Yes. So, and the other assistance that we have been providing, that we wish to provide the workers going forth, other than relief, is that our focus has slightly has also shifted and become broader. We are now actively tracking the changes that are taking place in workplaces because of COVID. What are the labor law changes? What are the changes in practices of factories because of COVID? And how does this impact the lives of workers? As well as we feel that the welfare provisions that the state needs to provide, and that workers need support in accessing, that it was not a focus for CBDEP at all. I mean, it wasn't such a major focus for CBDEP in the past, but now we want to do more of that work, because we feel that the because the economy was anyway a little suffering before we got into the pandemic, and now with the pandemic and the major job loss, a lot of workers are suffering with not enough employment and not enough income. And so any welfare measure, even a small welfare scheme, if we are able to get them to access that with the government, or we are able to provide such relief like I just mentioned, that would be of big help to them. Yeah, so I would like to stop here. There are some pictures, I think, in the next slides. Yeah, so some of the workers that we were able to distribute ration and also give some cash support. You can see in the bottom left-hand side, they are workers from West Bengal, and they're standing outside their shared accommodation. A lot of these workers were left in a lurch when their contractors disappeared overnight, when the lockdown was announced, with no money and no food and very cramped quarters that they were staying in. And so they feared for their life, and they went back home looking for some security and assurance and some sort of comfort. And so, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions here. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much, Deepika, for this really interesting presentation. We have one question regarding the so-called relaxation of labor law. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about what that actually means, and then also what the central government does in terms of this topic.
Yes. So basically, one state, that was Uttar Pradesh in the north of India, announced that it was suspending almost all laws except for three. And there are, I think, 44 labor laws that exist in India, and except for three, they were suspending all laws. This included laws which governed regulated the safety of workplace, the trade union, recognition of trade unions, and legal working hours. So all of these were suspended in the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is the most populous state of India. And it is yeah. So in this, so once this was announced, and it was not done in consultation with the trade unions, of course, and it was not done in there was no proper parliamentary procedures were not followed, um, and and this was done for 3 years. Uh, uh, Taking a page out of their book, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh also passed similar laws, and also Karnataka, which relaxed working hours and made it permissible for factories to run, get workers to work for up to 12 hours per day, for 6 days a week. And so the it's according to some experts, it was almost like putting India back in the 19th century Britain, pre-industrial revolution Britain, where the employer and the government would decide what to do and how a worker should work, and no consultation at all with trade unions and worker rights organizations and workers themselves. And so the government side of this was that this would boost the MSME sector, and a lot of small organizations would benefit from this. Though it was not substantiated how they thought that this would be the case, because what the experts were talking was that right now, in the middle of the pandemic, there is not going to be any new investment. And so if Uttar Pradesh was trying to attract new investment, relaxation of labor laws was not going to help that case at all. Then they so basically the government was under pressure from ILO and from several trade unions as well, who had written to the ILO, and ILO had also given a sent a scathing message on about this, and about reminding India about their international commitments to standards. And so in the last that we know was that the government had written to the states, asking them to desist from making such sweeping changes to labor laws, and to keep in mind the commitments that India has made to international labor standards. And yeah, so we will continue to track the situation right now. Yeah.
Then one question was also regarding this relaxation or suspending of labor laws, whether the government gave a reason for this.
The reason for the suspension of labor laws was that it will attract investment. It will make it easier for the MSME sector, that is micro, small, and medium enterprises, which were the hardest hit by the lockdown, and that it will help them get off their feet, and they will not have to worry about compliances, and they will not have to worry about labor officers if these sweeping changes are announced. So that was the justification, and it was carried out, without any parliamentary debate.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deepika. We also received questions on the topic of contract labor And also on the issue of child labor, maybe this is a good opportunity to hand over the presentation to Mary, because we are going to be looking at a different region within the Indian subcontinent as well. So we'll look at Tamil Nadu, and I know that both of these issues are a problem in Tamil Nadu for sure. So Mary, as we heard from Deepika already, with the rapid lockdown in India, there were hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who actually got stuck with no wages and no support, thousands of miles away from their homes. And you were among the first to react with emergency aid to the need of migrant workers. So you brought some slides with you as well to give us an update of what SAFE has been doing in order to support these workers, but also to tell us a little bit of what has happened to workers since April. So maybe you can start with your presentation. Really glad to have you.
Thank you, Sena. Yes, we are, all the information, whatever Deepika has been sharing, which is applicable for Tamil Nadu also, since we are nearest to the state and we are in the, India. Once, we have started the relief work very early, because the lockdown is announced in the 22nd of March, but our relief work started in the 27th of March. Why we have to start such early? But we could hear continuous call from our own workers that they do not have anything to eat. So that was the situation to start early. Now at present already explained about the India situations, particularly for Tamil Nadu, 5,08,511 infection cases. And then, it is active cases 46,912, and then the death is 8,434. The similar way in Tirupur, we could see 4,938 infections. The active cases are 1,822. Many of them are recovering regularly. The death cases are 86. Next slide, please.
So maybe just to make people understand, Tirupur is the city that you are based in within Tamil Nadu, for those who don't know Tirupur.
Okay, good. Thank you. The Tirupur is a garment industry hub for the nationally, not only nationally, internationally, it is known for garment industry, which is situated in Tirupur, which is situated in Tamil Nadu. Tirupur is one of the districts in Tamil Nadu. It has around 16 lakh population. 160,000 populations are here. Here it is a major business is only a garment. There is no major business. Only support to the garment industry, allied industry will be here. Here around 700,000 are working in the garment industry, and more than 9,000 small, medium and big industries. Around 9,000 industries are there. The garment industry have the entire supply chain. Garment, cloth to spinning, where the spinning yarn is there, yarn to produce from yarn to t-shirt, everything, the entire production chain is available in Tirupur and the surrounding districts of Tirupur. So what was the impact on garment industry? Back as already it is factories were full lockdown April to May, and partially from June to August, and reopened now 1st to September. This is from the government side. The government order is being given like this. But what's the reality over here? Each and every factory, I mean, around as of now, 40% of the factory is being reopened. But though the government is announced 100% of the workers, but none of the factory is able to open with the full-fledged manner, because I mean 1/3 of the capacity only till June. Now it has been little bit increased, because this is the month. One is the transport is being announced. The raw material shortage is found due to restriction on vehicle movement, and lack of workers due to lack of transportation, and the confusion about the government rules. You can see in the month of June, the government is saying that you can invite the workers from other states. Other state means Bihar, Odisha, wherever you want, you can bring the workers. But you have to get a e-pass. The practical difficulties was also there. Suppose if the employer is preparing the vehicle and sending the vehicle to Bihar or Odisha or Jharkhand, there they are the workers, 6 workers, if they are ready to come, then they will get a e-pass for 6 workers. But while coming, they may take, instead of 17 or 18 people, but in the every border, they have to show this e-pass and everything. Almost they have to cross 4-5 states. While covering that, they will ask them to stop. Each and every state they will stop. Most of the places, the particular government or the checking point, they were asking them to send the workers back to their home. So this kind of situation also made the factory owners not able to bring the workers, and also it is heavily invested. So they were not, because of that also the government rules, one state is following, other state is not following. So they have to cross many states to come to Tirupur or Coimbatore or Erode, any one of the districts. It was highly difficult for the factories. This also another reason for that. And also roughly 50% to 50% of the orders, and then from US 30% of the order from Europe were cancelled during the March and April. Now only it is started slowly picking up. Hereafter we are expecting it will pick up. We have to see that. Next slide, please. The main reason, the restriction of the movement during the lockdown period is the cause for all these things. Already how the movement was difficult for the interstate migrant is explained by Deepika very well. And then cultural of a illegal contracting system. This was very much highlighted during this period. The contract system this is legally allowed in the country, because there is a separate law, contract labor law is there. But what is happening in Tirupur city, even in the Bangalore also, it's a similar thing is happening. Deepika was mentioning in the labor contractor brings 100 laborers or 50 laborers or 10 laborers from their own places, wherever he has a source, and he's bringing in, but he is not a registered person. He himself works as a worker inside the factory. This is the person is communicating with the owner of the factory and the worker of the factory. all the workers under him only, they will work. But he will not, I mean, whatever the amount he is receiving from the owner, the worker do not know whatever he has spoken with them, because it is all verbal communications or verbal contractual things. So it is not, nothing is being written. So whatever the contractor gives the amount to them, they have to receive it. The principal, there is no connections between the principal employer and the contract workers. This was the major problem during this time to provide the relief materials. Now, what the employer says, the employer, when the government asking them to government from the beginning itself, the government order has given very clearly that during the lockdown period, wage has to be paid. Now, even if the employer itself denied to pay, employer association itself declared that they cannot pay because they do not have any orders. They do not have any work, we cannot pay. I mean, they have openly said in the several newspaper and openly declared to the district authorities. But at the same time, they have told we can provide, they can provide food only for the workers, those who are staying inside the hostel. That is not a salary, only provide the food for them. The rest of them, they deny to pay. And the second thing, they also do not know how many contract workers are working in their factory. I mean, government also does not have the number of workers list, and the factory association, even in the factory also do not know how many contract workers are there in the factory. But in such a situations, the Tamil Nadu government is also not able to take a proper measure how many food packet or how many food materials we have to provide for the workers. So this was the difficult for them. In such a situation also, the local district authority have taken one step ahead to count the numbers. You see, the entire city, 200,000, approximately 200,000 workers are there. In that, 85 to 90% of the people are working under the contract system, under the labor contractor. And then how will they eat? Their habit, every week they will receive the money and send to the families. The announcement also abruptly it has been done. Everyone knows about it. That is why immediately announcing after a week, everyone was under the hungry. So this is what the very fundamentally the problem has to be addressed. Otherwise, the similar situation will continue forever. And then already I have explained, they do not have any savings. Whoever is under the labor contract system, they, as per the law, if they are the contractor are registered under the Contract Labor Act, then he has to provide all the facilities. If he is not paying, as per the law, the principal employer is sole responsibility to pay all the social security schemes. Even in the wages and everything is applicable for the contract system. Now he is putting out, it is not my responsibility. The principal employer wanted to escape like that. This is the contractor, I am paying to the contractor, this is responsibility of contractor. Contractor disappeared. 70 to 80% of the contractor disappeared after a week. No one was there. Only the interstate migrant contractor, those who are staying along with them only were present, they also do not know what to do, because so many contractors approached us to provide the food materials for them. So these are all amongst these situations. And also they were staying under the 10x10 rule. The whole through, at least while they were working, they will go to the factory, they will have some relaxation. But under these circumstances, when they are coming out, the police also beaten up like anything. They should not come out. So the control was, the strictness was very arrogant way also they have followed it up. So these are all the things made them psychological problems. And only in and around Tirupur, 29 mass protests had happened May and June only, because the burnout was expressed in such a way. Next slide, please. I mean,
I think your explanation already answers a little bit the question whether it was more difficult for people under contract labor to react to COVID, or to whether it was harder for them under the crisis. So maybe you can explain a little bit what you did as SAFE with the donations in order to support workers and their families.
Yes. I mean, during this time, we have, SAFE has concentrated only with the interstate and intrastate migrants, because the local people, already government was announced the dry rations and everything. We have, jointly along with the government also, we have emphasized them to implement for the local people. But for the interstate migrants, you can see the photographs. This is the family you can see. I mean, these children, when I received a call from they were not even having a phone. Neighboring called us. These children were 4 days without food. These the same family, this kind of 4 days without food, they were starving. They do not have even a milk. So that is where we have continuously, we have targeted these kind of families. And then during this, our movement also been restricted. And then we have got a special permission from our district authority. And then we have entered into this kind of families. And once in a week, we have continuously, because we were also not able to purchase the food materials, because there is no shops to purchase anything. So in such a situation, we were not able to, whole purchase, we were not able to do that. So small, whatever we are purchasing it, we were able to distribute this kind of families. But every day, we will get more than 200 calls or 300 calls. Whole day and night. There were our different language people where we have kept. They have listening the things. Only with the FEMNET support, we could reach 3,153 families. Altogether, SAVE has crossed 50,000 families during this pandemic, with different kinds of donors supported us to support these families. It's not only a food materials, but food materials was very essential for them. And also, while they were moving from one city to their own native places, they do not know how to enroll themselves in the train. And also, if they are getting a train, none of them know about it, where to move, how to go and get the train. These kind of challenges they were facing a lot. During that time, in the month of June, the May and June, we were supporting them to go and be in the proper places. And 2 days they will be in the queue to enroll into the train, because all the checkup before that, 2 days before itself, they will take a bag and vacate the room, and then they will go. I mean, there are, next slide, please. There are several challenges faced by them. House rent. Yeah, please, next slide. Please, next slide. Yeah, these are all the different photographs for your observations. Come on, next slide. Next slide. So I would like to thank one and all who have supported through FEMNET to support all these kind of children, particularly women and children. Next. Yes. Now the current situation is less number of factories are running due to lack of business demand. Hostel workers, those who did not return home, are continuing the work. Young workers and children are brought back to the workstation since schools are remained closed. I mean, this is illegally they have brought it. Now recently we might have, several people might have heard about it. Several children are rescued and adolescents are brought illegally. Whatever the document they supposed to have, the documents are they do not have, and then they were forced to work, because all these rescued children also met by me, and then I was asking them, why you want to come back, and then why you have communicated with officials that you are not happy about that. They were asked to work day and night. Such a small children, I mean 15 to 18 are there. There are several of below 14 years. They were all asked to because lack of workers, shortage of workers. They were asked them to do like this. So in these situations, the employment and the recruitment practice also have to be highly questioned. And then electronic pass entry is essential. Now in this month only, within the Tamil Nadu, the electronic pass is been stopped, but other state, it should be, they have to get the electronic pass because to prevent the infections.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Wait a minute, Mary, sorry, I would like to take a question from the audience. So you were saying that young workers and children are being brought to work. So this is due to the lack of workforce, or this is because these young people need to supply money for their families who are in need?
I think this both the way we have to look into it. One side, the push factor is there from the family side, because now in the family, the countryside, everyone is without job. So this is the opportunity. I mean, when they are going there, they are making advantages of that. So they are taking that. I mean, factory needs worker. The family wants money to make their basic livelihood. So this way they are sending. You can see here. I mean, I met 13 children in their native places, which is around 400 kilometers from Tirupur. All of them sisters. I mean, elder sister and then younger sister. So elder sister is 15 years, the younger one is 13 years. So this is the way they have sent. In all one family, something like this. So the both, I mean, both the side there is a need now, but where is my ethical way of doing the business? That also highly we have to question. And the parents' side, at least they are all having a ration card. The free of cost food is there. The food is issued by the Tamil Nadu state government. What for the need of the money, when they are going there, the agent, one who is picking up the agent, and the second thing, the factory, all the HRs are in the now in the field. I mean, they are overruling the recruitment practices. So this is the right time.
So, Mary, sorry that I interrupt, but we are a little bit short on time. So we will definitely have the opportunity in the end of, after we've been hearing all of our speakers, to open up the discussion to the panel again. But for now, I would like to hand over to Kalpona to also get a little bit of impression of how the situation is in Bangladesh as compared to India. I think the situation in India sounds pretty grave, but I wonder how the neighboring country, Bangladesh, is handling the situation when looking at the fact that Bangladesh is actually even more dependent on the garment industry than India is. So maybe Kalpona, you can describe a little bit what has changed since April. We have been talking last time on Rana Plaza anniversary. So by the time we were thinking whether this is going to be a new tragedy to garment workers, maybe you can let us know a little bit about whether this has come true.
Okay, thank you, Zina. And it was really, great to hear from Deepika and Mary, as always. It is really informative. So the situation in Bangladesh since April, one is like that we haven't died yet. We're still alive during this pandemic with so many difficulties. Like country is downplaying with the number of infected people, as well as testing people, as well as a number of deaths. And it is happening since beginning. So we are a country with 160 million people, but only 340,000 people has been tested so far. So it is nothing in percentage. Okay, so people are getting infected pretty much every day. And if we just move to our worker, the workers are working, as we have been discussed in previous webinar, that the worker was forced to come to the city while whole country was on, under like so-called lockdown. And there wasn't any public transportation, so they had to use or change the transportation 10 times, which is put them in a high risk to get infected. Many thousands of women workers, they walk like 150 kilometers or 200 kilometers with their small children. And it's all happened because they really needed their job. So you can feel the desperate to have their jobs. We put this slogan that no jobs mean no money and no money means no food. So that is that reality for our worker. So the factories came in full phase, like end of April, a very last week of April, and the manufacturers literally did not pay workers full month wages for that month, for April. And many, 100,000 workers, thousands of workers, I should say, that they haven't received their wages the month they worked, like March 2020 and April 2020. And from April and May and June, workers started losing their jobs, and the first definite date has been affected to the women, young women workers, those are working in these factories. So far, what we can say, it is over 200,000 workers lost the job during this time, and they haven't received their legitimate severances or legal severances that they owe to the factory. And yet there is a huge fear that more workers can lose their jobs, because every factory, they're downsizing their operational cost. And when they're cutting the cost, they choose worker first. So the factories are, downsizing the workers 100% to 90%, or some factory 80%. And coming days, it can be more. So far, till this month, the workers only was able to get to paid because there is a too big stimulation package has given by the government, while the brands was irresponsibly just run away, suspended their business, or haven't paid their bill that they were owed to the manufacturers in here. So the manufacturers has a reason, or had a reason to say that, oh, we don't have money, so we cannot pay. It was close to $4 billion worth product, the garment oath business has been canceled during that time, after massive campaign that we have been done together, like with FEMNET, with our CCC network, with Global Union. Many of the brands has come back, but they haven't come back with their full phase of orders. So now these days, I should say like a few days ago, 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 8 weeks ago, when workers was losing jobs, mainly the pregnant women was targeted by the manufacturers, because the manufacturers wanted to get rid of paying the workers maternity leave with benefit, which is like 4 months. And then now the workers, those are targeting who has voice. So country always been very famous for union busting, and it has been increased in these days. So workers now, they know there is a huge harassment and retaliation being facing, they're being facing, and in the gender-based violence has been increased in the factories, but they are not even willing to complain because they are extremely feared to lose jobs, and they cannot afford losing jobs during this pandemic. So this is the situation we are in now.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds quite similar to what we heard from India, that the need for workers to have work actually makes it more difficult for them to speak up, because you're so dependent on the wage that you receive. You mentioned that also gender-based violence has increased in the factories with the pandemic. We are having this joint project together on the issue of gender-based violence and harassment in factories. What do you think is the development in this regard? Like, what can be done to prevent women to get harassed and violated even more now?
Yeah, thanks for raising these. It has been a privilege to run this project together with FEMNET, and thanks, all the stakeholder, all the contributor who putting fund together, supporting these women workers, and especially those women who took the courage to end the violence in these factories. So the situation is now, we have been little pushback, but we are not just cleaning our hand that no, we cannot do this. We know that when we are talking about wages, when we are talking about wage theft, union busting, in the same time we need to raise more strongly our voice against gender-based violence at workplace, in the community, because during this lockdown, or during this pandemic, when the workers have been more exposed to their partner, the violence has been increased. And also in the factory, when we have been already documented that some of the factory middle managers are giving unethical offer to their our women worker, to keep their job safe in those factories, like if you pay me like X amount of money, then I will make sure that your job is there. Or if you give me XYZ benefit, then I will be make sure that you have a job. So women workers don't want it to be financially insecure. So sometimes they're listening, sometimes they're protesting, but when they're protesting, they're losing job. But what we are doing, we are keep continuing advocating on these, and we'll be doing these because we feel the wage and the GBV, it should go parallelly. Otherwise, the improvement that has been made, it will be go vain. So we will keep fighting, and so do the other group in working in here. They believe in the same, and I think that FEMNET will keep supporting, and the people who are supporting FEMNET, they will keep supporting to make sure that we can continue work on make the workplace GBV free.
We have heard from India that there is a labor law relaxation, which means like a pushback in terms of labor law. Deepika said something, it feels like the 19th century again. Is anything like that happening in Bangladesh or expected to happen in the future?
Officially, that the level of relaxation did not happen yet, but unofficially it is always there, because our workers are not free to organize the union or free to join with union when it is in the law. Okay, so there is a high court verdict to have a committee, anti-harassment committee in the factory, but that is not enforced in the factories because of this so-called relaxation, which is not visible, but it is always there. So as what in happening in India, it is not that extreme in Bangladesh yet officially, but it's a fear because our government so influenced by the Indian government in many cases or most of cases. So we really don't know. They might be, bringing these issues in the country that our neighbor country, if they can do, then why not we not? Okay, so that's a fear always lies there. So in this order, I think we always need to speak up on these, and we need to connect our international community with all these. So there is always a pressure group and voice raised group from the ground. We keep talking about it. In fact, manufacturers don't get a chance to do it. So there is a fear, but not happened yet. But last few months the court was closed, so the workers did not get justice, especially those cases are pending in the court, in the labor court. There is a unofficial, not unofficial, I mean the union is not registering now, so there are some relaxation, but it is not through an official announcement. And one big relaxation that I wanted to criticize that has happened in back April, while manufacturers, while brand and retailers was asking a 50% of discount for the product, those has been made. And in the same time, the manufacturers here in Bangladesh, they wanted to have 40% off for the wages. Like they want to give only 60% of wages for our workers, while 100% wages put our workers in a difficult situation to run their life. So that relaxation has been given in past.
Thanks so much, Kalpona. Maybe this is a good opportunity for me to go kind of to hand over to Gisela through. I wanted to point out a report by CCC that I mentioned before. You just said that the question of wages is obviously center in this whole debate around COVID and the crisis and how it impacts on workers. So maybe if you can show the next slide. I wanted to point out the underpaid in the pandemic report by the Clean Clothes campaign, which is a report that summarizes or estimates what the garment industry actually owes to its workers, because this wage issue obviously is twofold. On the one hand, you have like the normal wages, which are already so low, poverty wages, that people can't make savings, so that when a crisis hits them, they are in front, like on the verge of struggling to survive. And on the other hand, this wage gap that was shown in the corona pandemic, so that actually brands and retailers didn't pay the wages that they owe to the workers. So maybe if you can show that little video, there is simply some numbers in that report that would point out what immense wage gap there is between what workers actually should have owed and what brands and retailers then in the end didn't pay. So in Bangladesh, that was $400 million. In Tirupur, it was 54% of normal wages. And in Bangalore, it was around $62 million of wages. While even in the capital region of India, it's 95% of wages. So this whole issue led up to a campaign of the Clean Clothes campaign, the so-called #PayUp campaign, that asked brands and retailers to pay what they owe to the workers, which is obviously something that also FEMNET joined. So FEMNET was supporting this demand, and to explain how we're trying to push brands and maybe also politics within Germany. Gisela Burckhardt can give us a little bit of a perspective of what FEMNET is doing in Germany to support this. So I'm really happy to have you here, Gisela, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Zina, and please just go ahead with the next slide. I wanted to first speak about the situation in Germany because just to explain our partners in the South how the situation is here. The turnover of the German clothing brands was reduced by about 20% last half year. And for example, a company like H&M made a loss of 500 million euros in the second quarter of 2020. Some brands are in a critical situation, as we all know, like Esprit, Tom Taylor, Karstadt, and some of these, a lot of the shops had to close down, or at least part of their shops they had to close down. But this is not only because of Corona, it has also to do that these companies apparently did not improve their business in terms of, for example, online business that has increased incredibly. We can see it from brands like Adidas. I found that very interesting. I read it yesterday that Adidas has doubled its turnover in the first half year of 2020. It's incredible to think about this. And they had a profit of 600 to 700 million euro. If you look at the consumer, the production has increased and the sale has increased, whereas the producers and the workers in the countries are really suffering. It is incredible to just to make this realistic, or one need to think about the situation really. So next slide, please. So within Germany, there are other different than from situation in India and in Bangladesh. Government here is supporting the German companies. 85% of these companies have applied for short-term compensation for their employees. That means that it is not so much the company itself that is suffering. For sure, they also had, as I said, they have quite some problems, but support is given by the German government. Also, a reduction of sales tax from 19 to 16%. Is one method to stimulate the consumers in Germany so that they buy more. Which in itself is a question mark for us, I must say. Well, the tax carryback, or what we call steuerlicher Verlustrücktrag, is possible, which is very good for companies, really. And there was a 25 billion euros spent by the German government as an interim aid for small and medium enterprises. For sure, not only textile, but all small and medium enterprises. And our German Development Cooperation Ministry, BMZ, supports about 200 projects of companies in developing countries with up to 200,000 euro, partly financed 100% through its Develop PPP program, just to mention that what also is done. Yeah, next slide, please. So what has happened up to now? You might know that it was mentioned beforehand that the ILO has called at different times. For example, in India, it was mentioned because of the relaxation of the labor laws in India. So ILO has also intervened and has written a letter to the government. By the way, also the German Textile Partnership, several companies within the German Textile Partnership have written a letter to the Indian government, to Modi. asking them to keep to reinforce the national law and not to relax the existing labor laws. By the way, this is actually also happening in Indonesia, the so-called omnibus law, which they are discussing, where they're also thinking of reducing labor laws, and in order to attract foreign investment. And this is a real danger in the actual situation. And it, again, within the German Textile Partnership, it is being discussed now to write a letter to the Indonesian government as well. So there is this call to action from the ILO, and the idea is, on one hand, to get access and accelerate access to credits and all forms of support, especially emergency relief fund in order to give workers an income. It's a very few income, unfortunately, but at least something. Then second is brands should commit to pay manufacturers for finished goods and goods in production. But here we have to see, it's interesting, it is more or less an appeal to the brands, but it is not a real commitment that brands have to do. Many brands have signed this ILO call, but one must say they don't commit to anything. It's not a legally binding obligation. And that's what we are criticizing. And okay, the third point is that ILO and others also want to strengthen the social protection system and public infrastructure for social services. That is something on the long-term run, so that workers are not left without any money, as it is happening now in the Corona crisis, as we can see. So if there is built up a kind of fund out of which workers can be paid in such situation, that is very necessary, we think, and that must be thought about on a long-term perspective. Next, please. Next slide. So what is the German Textile Partnership doing? There was, you know that FEMNET is part of the German Textile Partnership. We actively contribute to different groups in the German Textile Partnership. The partnership has published the guidelines for responsible purchasing practices in times of COVID-19, which more or less refer also to the ILO call. As I said before, there was also some letters written to the Indian government as well. We hope now it will be given to the Indonesian government against the relaxation of labor law, which we think this is a really dangerous situation, which is coming up in several countries. Then we have a kind of incident list of complaints where we collect all the complaints from partners about worker rights violations now during Corona. And we want to keep track of this. And what is the German government doing? Well, the German government has committed 20 million euro to the EU budget in order to support the Bangladesh government. Altogether, apparently this will be 93 million for a direct support of workers. That is in cooperation with BGMEA, the business association there. BGMEA provides the worker data to the government, and it was told us that about 200,000 workers will benefit from the cash transfer via mobile phones. I think this has already happened. That means that the Bangladesh government need to pay this amount already. At least I think it was not a payment directly, it was an offer to the managers of factories. They needed to pay an interest rate of 2%, I think, but that is a way how they could support workers and the payment of salaries during the crisis. And ILO has just committed this money that I think they needed to collect the money and still haven't transferred the money to the government of Bangladesh. That's what I understand. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems to me this is the situation.
Gisela, regarding the wage assurances that we were talking about earlier, you said that there was also a call to brands in order to publicly commit to wage assurances also within the textile partnership. Was there a good response rate on that, or what was the responses by brands and retailers in?
Okay, maybe can you just show the next slide? I'm coming up to it.
I think we have to skip then some slides to go to the demand slide.
Okay. Yeah, but I come to it later on. Yeah, here we are. But maybe can you go back, please, once again, so that I can speak about the others?
Yeah, we have 2 more minutes, basically. So.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's really short. Okay, so we can present, or we can send around the slides later on. Yeah. Well, okay, what our demands on one hand is, well, this wage assurance, as Zina mentioned, which is a CCC letter that has been sent to many companies. Up to now, many the brands, as far as I know, have not really reacted to this. The wage assurance means that companies commit publicly to the payment of orders that are completed or are in production. And there should be no negotiations of terms for orders and no cancellation and so on. That has happened quite a lot. Kalpona has mentioned it, that a lot of price negotiations happened later on. And on the long run, it is hoped to have protection of workers' health, as I mentioned before, to have a long-term structure set up with a fund where people or workers can be supported by. Yeah, that our demands. And the other demand, which you have skipped now before, is to have a legally binding agreement. We are very much in Germany. There is a very strong discussion now going on. About 100 NGOs have supported this demand for a legally binding agreement, a so-called Lieferkettengesetz. It is in the discussion. Our Ministry of Economy, he is strongly opposing it, whereas other ministries are supporting it. So we need to see maybe in the next days whether this Lieferkettengesetz will become more realistic, and we hope that it will become. And around more than 100 NGOs are supporting it, but also quite a lot of companies, around 60 companies, who think it is necessary to get such a law. So thank you for the moment then, and hopefully there is still possibility for questions.
Yes, I already have one question in the loop. Maybe we can actually go to the next slide, because it's already answering a little bit what was asked. What can I, as a private person, do to support beside talking about it with others? I think the point, talking about it with others, would be something that Kalpona would usually be saying. So tell your friends, tell everyone you know about what you have heard here, and to take action. Can you please go to the next slide? Because what you can do, I made a little list of what we think you can do. Obviously, you can always support financially the actions that we have been talking about and the project partners are implementing in the countries in order to support workers and their families. So if you want to donate for these activities, you can do so. If you want to stay tuned in terms of getting to know what is happening in the production countries, you can follow the CCC Live blog. And if you want to actually tweet to brands directly, you can do that on the Fashion Checker. If you follow this link that I have posted here, you can directly tweet to brands to pay up, to publicly commit to their wage assurances. And you can also track what brands are doing. So this last point, the last link, you can follow what brands have publicly committed to wage assurances and which haven't. And there you can also see that actually this talking to your friends and talking to brands directly as consumers also works, because, for example, this week Primark has committed to wage assurances. So that is a quite positive development. And I would like to give this question or any final words you would want to give out to the participants, to our panelists. So I would like to give everyone a last word, maybe in the opposite direction. So Gisela can start.
Okay. Well, I got very much touched again by your explanation, Mary, about the situation of the contract system. I feel that this is a really shocking information. I got to learn about it more in depth just now through Corona, not today, but through Corona. This contract system, which really that about 70 to 80% of all workers are contract workers, is something very revealing. I found this very, very much important today, and I want to thank you all, Mary, as well as Deepika and Kalpona, to all the work that you have done up to now for these workers, partly with our support, but also others have supported. I think it is so necessary to support the workers now. We can do only little bit, but the little at least is something. And thank you for all your engagement. And I think this is also putting yourself in danger, because Corona is also touching you. So really, thank you so much for this work that you are doing.
Then Kalpona, you have a final word as well.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that, it is pandemic and we all are in it, but consequences is different for country like Germany and country like India and Bangladesh. So from your place, speak up, fight, and support. Otherwise we cannot get this through. Our workers and our people already in a difficult situation. Without this, support, it won't be possible for us to get through. Thanks.
Thank you. Then Mary, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is under the same the pandemic situation, as Kalpana said. During this crisis time, everyone, I mean, each one of us have to be supported each other to overcome the current situations.
Yes. And then Deepika.
Yeah, just to finally add that it is a long road ahead. I think the repercussions of this we will see for a long time to come, and so it's a long fight, and we need all the support that we can get. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I have nothing to add to your words. I think the only thing that's left for me is to say thank you very much for all the great work you're doing to support the workers, and thank you for being here today, taking the time. It's quite late in your places as well. I know that, so thanks a lot for this. Yeah, and thanks to all the participants and for all your questions. I think, yeah, we will do these kind of updates maybe regularly in the future, so that people won't forget garment workers around the world. Yeah. So
thank you, Sina.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Moderation.
Thank you,
so
FEMNET
much.
team. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
for everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.